Welcome to the New Economy. What's next? Our guest today is Dr. John Rodgers. He's an ophthalmologist and economist and author of The Bahamian Dream, the economic and social changes needed to fulfill our promise. Today we're going to talk about the government measures that were passed recently, as well as what's next. Stay tuned. If you are a business person that is looking to grow your business in the new economy, this show is for you. My name is DRC Raming Jr. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Arawak X, a financial services firm. I'm a serial entrepreneur, futurist, and technologist. I studied robotics and after university chose to build my international business from the Bahamas. With all that is going on in the world, one thing is certain. The businesses that will survive and thrive have to evolve or die. This show will answer the question, what's next for us? What's next for the new economy? Join us on the new economy. What's next? Economics is often defined as the study of how people, businesses, government, and societies make choices with the resources that they have. The question for us in the Bahamas is how do we best make use of the resources that we have? Economics always speaks to one of the following topics. What are the available resources? How do we mobilize them? Which people and processes are needed to make this happen? The reasons that we as entrepreneurs, business professionals, and policymakers need to have some understanding of economic theory and ideas is because economic policy sets the framework in which we all exist. You could think of it as the soil in an orchard. If the mix is off, the fruit trees, our businesses, wither and die at worst or produce no fruit at best. Rich soil produces great fruit. Poor soil produces no fruit. Understanding how these ideas transfer to businesses and the wider society is the goal of this show. We're talking about government measures recently passed by, the measures recently passed, the stimulus, the subsidies. Can you speak a little bit about that?
So I think the Bahamian government has done a good job in implementing these new subsidy programs. And as you know, to date, there are 4 of them. There's the VAT credit and refund, which is the latest subsidy. There's the sole proprietors program for persons who are sole owners in the tourism sector. And there's a small business loan program that consists of about $20 million that will provide an income for small businesses once they are prepared to maintain their current employee levels, pay those employees, pay their rents, and pay their utilities. All of these are good programs and are much needed and are very similar in many ways to what other countries what the governments of other countries have implemented. But the problem is that they're only for a relatively short period of time. I think the longest one is NIA, and it's 13 weeks. And the problem with that is that there are various estimates as to how long this crisis will last. And some people think 6 months, some people think 1 year, some people think 18 months. So I sort of based my thoughts around a 1 year period. I think we're going to have to hunker down and come up with a plan that will take care of our needs over that 1 year period.
Where do you see the balance of regulators in all of these sectors, energy, food, pharmacy, medicine, in terms of there's that tension between regulators, the innovators, and
there are many. It depends on which country you're in. Okay. In the Bahamas, for example, we have a problem here because in the case of many of the regulatory bodies, customer service is certainly lacking in terms of the response to the applicants and communicating with applicants and responding in terms of giving permission or not giving permission or granting licenses, not granting licenses. It just takes far too long. For example, in our financial services industry,
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons why we have lost a lot of business is because the time it takes approvals to be granted. That whole approval mechanism needs to be become more efficient, should we say.
Yes.
And then you have a human capital issue in that in many of the institutions, some of the persons working in these institutions don't have the skill sets to be where they are. And this can lead to a lot of inefficiency, especially delays, because if a person really doesn't know what they're doing, applies, then they tend to dilly-dally and not take any action or any responsibility for their lack of activity. And that is a very frustrating to the applicants.
Certainly.
Time is money. And
time is money in business. Time is money, and every moment that you wait is more bills that are piling up. Do you think that the solution to that is continuing education? Because obviously you can't you can't just flip a switch and that be solve that problem. How do you?
It is continuing education is also a case of mindset as well, because there are many people in these regulatory bodies who, by nature, are not entrepreneurial. And if you don't understand the mindset of the entrepreneur, and you've never worked in a business one day of your life, and you don't know what it is to have to work around the clock to pay your bills, to pay your employees, then you have no feel, no empathy for a person who's in business who's applying for a license.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have no skin in the game in terms of having to take out a loan to start a business and you're being held up by a regulator, there's a mismatch between the incentives of the applicant and the incentives of the regulators. And then in many instances in the Bahamas, we still have many rules and regulations which have not changed since King Hatchet was a hammer. And whilst they were appropriate for the period of time in which they were created, they are no longer appropriate. And so collectively, all these things have caused a disease of doing business in the Bahamas as opposed to an ease of doing business.
Do you think that this is an appropriate time for us as a nation to relook at all of these regulations and try and streamline them? I've heard of one very great way of measuring the effectiveness of a process by, instead of measuring it in terms of the number of steps, measuring it in terms of the amount of time it takes on average to go through it. Do you think that methods such as that can?
That certainly would help, yes. I think obviously each regulatory body needs to have a policy review. And those reviews should take place at least every 6 months to a year. There's another underlying problem as well, and that is that for example, you look at the FSA in Great Britain, the Financial Services Authority.
Yes.
When an applicant applies to them for anything, they have to respond within a given period of time. And if the answer is yay or nay, if the answer is nay, for example, then they have to say why, and they'll often provide information for the applicant to work on so that perhaps next time the answer can be yay and not nay. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, in these institutions, if you don't respond within that given period of time, then the applicant has the opportunity to take legal action under the area of law called administrative law, which is if he feels that the regulators aren't doing what they should be doing, and they have in some way damaged him personally, then he can actually take the regulator to court on grounds of malfeasance or misfeasance.
And obviously no one wants to have to go through that process, but you definitely need to have mechanisms for encouraging this ease of doing business. This shakeup, the answer for business should be, you get your documents as you need to, because you definitely need licenses. You still need licenses. You still need procedure, but you get them in as quick a manner as possible so that you can start doing business, because money is about to be very, very tight. And basically, if you can't have businesses dying before they even get started.
But this has to start at the top, okay? In the Bahamas now, for example, if you're a foreign investor and you want to come to the Bahamas, you have to go through the investment board and then the economic council and the central bank. And so by the time you've finished with that, if you ever finish, if you want to hang around to get a final answer, most people are gone. They're gone to Singapore or somewhere else.
Money doesn't wait.
These answers within 24 hours. No, it's not going to work. The problem is, if you would actually add up, DJ, all of and we'll never know the real answer to this question, but the number of people, the number of investments, the dollar value of those investments because of the bureaucratic inefficiencies, you'd be amazed. And what is the reason for this holdup? Is it KYC? What is it? I mean, KYC and
those
all
are
that
your
other
customer
stuff,
rules,
right? Can easily be iced right now, and you could do that inside of 24 hours. So what is the holdup? Now, in the old days, the holdup was deliberate because we didn't have the access to data and information as we now have, where we can, within seconds, basically determine who DJ Ramming is.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. But so that there was perhaps a more valid or legitimate reason then. But the real reason then was that it was a deliberate effort to force persons into facilitating the process by, as they say in Nigeria, applying a bit of dash meaning money on the table.
Yeah.
As simple as that.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Now, I don't believe that under this administration that is happening, but there is still the inefficiency of taking time too long to make approval on matters.
We'll be right back after a short message from our sponsor. At Arawak X, we understand that for businesses to grow, they need capital to hire staff, buy equipment, and fuel innovative ideas. We support this process by using technology, years of business acumen, and a world-class team to get business the investment they need to get to the next level. If you are a business owner and need between $100,000 and $3 million, contact us today. We will schedule a meeting over the phone or video chat. Get on the path to your dreams. Arawak X. Dream bigger.
Documents are part of every essential business process. That's why it is important that they keep moving forward. Documents can be forwarded to the wrong person, left behind on someone's desk, or in the worst case scenario, they're completely forgotten. So it can take an eternity for an invoice to be approved, for example. This causes aggravation and costs time and money. DocuWare takes your documents straight to the finish line electronically, without detours. All documents are always exactly where they are needed. Employees are immediately notified if they have to process a document. And what previously took an eternity is now almost incidental.
I've been blessed to grow up in a business family. The most important thing I've learned from them was to listen to experts' stories, learn from their successes, try to avoid their mistakes, and copy best practices. In the New Economy TV show, we are bringing innovative experts that are growth-focused. This show is for entrepreneurs, business leaders, and policymakers. Join me and my guests every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 p.m. on our TV. The New Economy. What's next? Well, there's definitely things that we need to improve, generally speaking, and I think that you said it earlier, but when we were talking, Robert Emanuel, if you could give them the quote that Robert Emanuel said. Ram Emanuel, the former mayor of New York, of Chicago.
Yeah, never let a good crisis go to waste.
Never let a good crisis go to waste. We can use this as an opportunity to streamline our way of doing business across all of these sectors, so that good, legitimate people can do business here and add value and hire employees and go after opportunities and just generally live the lives that we believe we're called to live.
Well, the other side of the coin too, DJ, is that you'd find that the majority of persons, especially in the financial services sector, who encounter these issues, surprisingly, are extremely laid back and very, very little reactiveness because they just accept it as the norm. But what's needed is a collective effort to move forward and get these things, make these things more efficient. And that's what needs to be changed. That whole system needs to be changed. Unfortunately, it's become ingrained in the economy. It's a way of life, and it's very difficult to change from the top.
Well, as you know, we're in financial services. I'm the CTO of Arawak X, and the finance capital is the grease of the economy. Without a properly functioning financial services industry, that means banks, financial institutions, insurance, things of that nature, it slows everything else down to a grinding halt. Without money, you can't really do anything. So there has to be. So it's a very passionate point of mine to make these systems more efficient. Because at the end of the day, it's the entrepreneur that suffers. It's the people that can hire the 50 people, 100 people, 200 people to go after the market that suffer. And in this climate where we really have to empower the innovators, we have to reduce some of these burdens. Otherwise, because tourism is gone for the next 8 months. You said it earlier on, even it could be as high as 18 months. So we have to find other ways to survive. That's just the reality.
Yes, I think we'll survive if the government can pump sufficient funds into the economy. But to answer or to comment on your
Mm-hmm.
comments, the Bahamas is not a very user-friendly place for Bahamian entrepreneurs. One of the things that entrepreneurs need to facilitate the development of their process or product or service is the access to capital. Mm-hmm. And as you know only too well, there are not many venture capitalists around, there are not many angel providers of capital. Most people don't come from families that have sufficient funding to help them achieve their dream. And the banking sector certainly isn't geared to providing capital
No.
to entrepreneurs. So really the only route you have is to be able to access monies from abroad. And that's not easy to do. I mean, it can.
No, I mean, it's basically the only people who can access money abroad are people that went to really good universities and know how the rest of the world works. But I mean, that's such a small percentage of us that that's not a recipe for success.
Well, I think that if you go to a bank and the bank is not willing to lend you monies, and you've been to all of them, there is provision, I believe, at the central bank to allow you to access funding from abroad. But I think that that's more cumbersome. It's expensive.
But
A
also,
lot of people don't have the know-how. But I think that ultimately the way to find that much needed capital formation is through some of the stuff that you and your dad have been working on, which is the digital exchange.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, I mean, we're this, like I say, this is what we're trying to solve for. This is how we're adding value to the society. It's, for us, it is what we view as we're a part of the ecosystem. There are definitely different types of financial institutions. No one financial institution replaces another. In fact, earlier today, me and Dad were looking at the the different types of just how diversified America has, like this beautiful, well diversified, where they have so many different companies that do just like really niche products, and how we haven't even scratched the surface of what's possible for financial services here. We haven't even, we're still struggling with some of the basics.
Well, for many years, the banks have had a lock on financial services. I mean, you can't, if you think about it, right? The function of the banking sector globally is to act as a financial intermediary between savers and borrowers.
It's a market maker.
It's a market maker, correct.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem here is that the banks really are just focused on mortgages, some commercial loans, and consumer loans in particular, because the return, because interest rates are so high on those loans, is much more rapid, and there's tremendous demand for it because of the fact that most people's incomes are below the living wage, and so they have to borrow to make up the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not prepared to take a risk on a entrepreneur if they can make money more easily and with less risk than otherwise. And I think also the other problem we suffer from is that the economy is limited or limiting in that we've only really focused on tourism and financial services. And we did well with those through the years.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. I mean, we shouldn't. We should never speak ill about the things that educated us and fed us. But what's next?
Well, the problem is that both of those industries have been on the downslide for the last 10 years. The only reason why tourism really picked up was because we had priced ourselves out of the market. But then when they had the natural disasters in the rest of the Caribbean a couple of years ago, that allowed us to pick up somewhat.
And the closing of Cuba, things like that.
Well, that was the initial thing that got us going. So it's just paradoxical that now Cuba is now back open. And that's one of the reasons why we're losing out on some of the product. But the 4 Ps in tourism is product, place, people, and price. and price is the main one. Okay, we have priced ourselves out of the market, probably the tune of 25 to 30% higher than other destinations, the rest of the Caribbean. We have a pretty good product. There's no denying that.
We're very good at it.
Yeah, we're good at that. The people, for the most part, are okay, but service could still be improved. And the only thing that's really keeping us going is the fact that we're so close to Florida.
Yes.
In financial services, that's really a dying, at least the offshore financial sector is a dying industry for many, many reasons.
Yes, which are so many we can't even get into, because they're.
Well, but that's an area where there are actually real opportunities.
Yes.
Okay. But that's for another discussion, another time.
Another time. For me, the reason why I think this is such an important discussion for us to have as a country is that tourism did well for us up until 2000, but really tourism, financial services, but really the economy hasn't really grown that much since 2000, whereas our population has almost doubled. So it's only simple math that'll tell you that if you keep this economy the same size, but you double the amount of people, you're going to have problems. You know, even before this.
Yeah, there are a couple of factors there, DJ. First of all, you have to look at the equity mix in ownership of the tourism and the financial services structure, right? It's basically 85 to 90% foreign owned in both sectors, and the domestic sector ownership is, by extrapolation, 10 to 15%. So my calculations have shown that if there had been a 30 to 30% ownership, 30 to 35% ownership domestically, we'd actually be in pretty good shape, because
we would
have been better, right? So that's a good part of it. The other part of it is that in the case of tourism, we really have done a bad job in modifying our approach to tourism as things have changed. So we've gone from overnight stays to cruise ship stays, okay, 80, 90%. And I think that, you know, as I always talked to you about before, by now we should have owned our own cruise ships.
I agree. I think, because if that's going to be our primary way of bringing tourists in, we definitely need to own that. I don't think people would have a problem with the cruise ships setting up their own islands if they were Bahamian owned.
And really, the only places that have seen an increased turnover have been those tourist-owned keys. And in financial services, it's pretty much the same. I mean, we've rested on our laurels, and we haven't really come up with that many new products. I mean, I think the trust product is still a good one. The family office one is a good one.
Yeah, those are good products.
But the key problem there is that the OECD still has you by the short and curlies, because they can control the corresponding banks, and they can control their own citizens who might want to put monies in the Bahamas. So that, as I say, that's a whole 2-hour discussion.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no. So, well, thank you very much, Dr. Rodgers. This is Dr. John Rodgers. He is an expert of many, many, many different topics. He's been thinking about this for a very, very long time. And is there anything final that you'd like to say to folks at home?
Well, you know, DJ, now's the time for the entrepreneurs to really come to the forefront. As I said many times before, unfortunately, only 5% of the population are entrepreneurs. So for those persons who are not entrepreneurial in heart and mind, perhaps they can just take a step back now. They have a lot of time at home to think about things. And you know what? You don't have to be anything special to be an entrepreneur. You just have to think of some service, some process, some product that
add value.
That you can do better than somebody else, or that nobody's thought of.